Someone shared a large number of accessories and raw materials for the Mercedes-Benz vehicles that were imported from abroad have tested positive for COVID. This happened in a Mercedes-Benz workshop in Shunyi. The person that sent this text message in the group chat was reminding everyone to also do individual nucleic acid testing and also self-quarantine at home. In addition, all the materials and equipments that were imported from abroad must also be inspected. Someone shared this picture showing people being tested at the scene. Someone replied, "I was planning to pick up a vehicle on New Year's Day, but seeing what happened, I'm afraid of doing that." Someone replied, "I was asked to not leave the Mercedes-Benz dealership." Someone replied, "Previously, the CCP blamed frozen seafood that were imported from abroad to be the cause of new COVID cases in China because these seafood carried the virus when they were imported. This can be understood because the virus can survive in a low-temperature environment. This is common sense. But speaking of vehicle parts being tested positive for COVID, that is against common sense and too ridiculous to believe." Someone replied, "Do not pay disregard to this message. It is a signal, that is, the CCP is seeking to prevent the Chinese people from purchasing any product that is imported from abroad, from cars to food, among many others." Someone mocked, "Why doesn't the CCP take measures to ensure that airspace in China is completely segregated because there may be virus even in the air?" Someone replied, "This is a very similar tactic that Beijing has been using in Hong Kong." Someone replied, "Chinese scientists have discovered lungs of the cars." This video clip shows Anastasia Lin, former Miss World Canada, speaking at the UN criticizing the CCP's crime of harvesting organs from Falun Gong practitioners.
On large scale. 中国共产党，当你们在杀害自己的公民赚钱的时候，你有什么资格坐在人权理事会上？
Someone shared that according to Radio Free Asia, recently, a bill intended to stop organ harvesting in China was introduced in the US Congress. According to Senator Tom Cotton, there is growing evidence that the Chinese Communist Party has and continues to harvest organs from prisoners and members of Chinese religious groups. When announcing the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act, he said this bill will identify and punish CCP members involved in forced organ harvesting. It's past time to hold Beijing accountable for these heinous acts. According to Representative Chris Smith, a co-author of the bill, he said in a statement, "Organ harvesting is a barbaric, inhumane, and egregious act of global significance as transnational human trafficking gangs, terrorist organizations, profiteers, and even governments, China's communist regime in particular, kill innocent people and sell their organs for profit. A global problem requires a global response. Under our bill, organ harvesters and traffickers, who often prey on vulnerable populations like political prisoners or minorities, will be identified and exposed by the State Department with the goal of punishing perpetrators and promoting effective sanctions and restrictions on travel. This bill will help shed more light on these horrific activities, enable the naming of names of the vicious perpetrators, and ultimately help put an end to this gruesome human rights abuse." This legislation authorizes and mandates the U.S. government to deny or revoke passports for illegal organ purchasers. The State Department reporting would identify foreign officials and entities responsible for forced organ harvesting. Mandates an annual report on U.S. institutions that train organ transplant surgeons affiliated with foreign entities involved in forced organ harvesting. Prohibits the export of organ transplant surgery devices to entities responsible for forced organ harvesting. Sanctions foreign officials and entities that engage in or otherwise support forced organ harvesting. According to Representative Tom Suozzi, for years, the Chinese Communist Party has continued to take advantage of prisoners and members of ethnic minority and religious groups. Today, we are still witnessing them take further advantage of these groups through organ harvesting. Members of the Chinese Communist Party must be held accountable for these unspeakable actions. Forced organ harvesting has no place in our world. Someone replied, If this bill is signed into law, the American political elite can forget about benefiting from organ tourism. Someone shared this video clip showing Joe Biden calling Kamala Harris president-elect.
President-elect Harris took hers today for the same reason.
Someone replied, perhaps accidentally, Biden told the truth. He knew that after all, he is still a puppet, even though seemingly he stole this election and became president-elect. Someone recalled this earlier video showing Joe Biden talking about the largest voter fraud organization in history.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Someone replied and mocked, I support Biden telling the truth. Someone shared this video clip showing two Americans protesting in front of the Chinese consulate in New York.
Chinese Communist Party is destroying its own people and trying to destroy America. If this country does not fight back, the Chinese Communist Party will take over.
The CCP has to be ended. The CCP stronghold over the PRC is wrong. CCP's virus has literally leached around the planet so that they can now utilize all bad actors and leaders to follow as how the CCP does their leadership, where then do as I say and just that.
This video clip was from a pro-Trump rally in DC. In an interview with NTD TV, this man shared his thoughts on the fundamental issue regarding this election.
We'll never be a Marxist nation. We're going to stand up for our First Amendment rights, and we're going to keep every church open in America. The men and women of God will not have our First Amendment rights trampled. This is not Iran. This is not North Korea. This is not China. This is not Vietnam. This is America, and patriots are going to stand up for the constitutions. Yeah, this is totally a we the people moment, and I'm telling you what, if American men don't start acting like American men, we're going to have to live our lives like Chinese men under communist control. So it's a pivotal moment. It's good versus evil, and it's not Republican versus Democrat. It's American versus communist.
Child, we will take you in. Child, we will bring you home. You'll be a flower that sees the spring. Soon a dove flying high.